This session is part of the Indie Author Fringe Conference, a 3 times a year author conference fringed to the major publishing fairs London Book Fair, Book Expo America and Frankfurt Book Fair. The Indie Author Fringe is run under the stewardship of the Alliance of Independent Authors, is organised by writers for writers and is free to attend. Let's see who's sharing self-publishing insights in this session.
So, as many of you may know, Ingram, before they did anything in the 1960s, they were a wholesaler in the US. So really, as a wholesaler, Ingram built its business on buying books from publishers and selling those on to retailers. Obviously, in the 1960s, we didn't have the online world like Amazon. But since the 1960s to today, Ingram has built its business on wholesale, on selling books not to the end reader, but to the retailers, the online bookstores, and the bricks and mortar bookstores as well, which are really important. In terms of who we work with 30,000 what we'd call the traditional publishers, the names that you'd be familiar with, HarperCollins, Penguin Random House. So the publishers that you would know and you would traditionally be used to, they use Ingram services. And then 4 years ago, when we launched IngramSpark, we acquired a lot of independent publishers and authors. So an author to Ingram is a publisher. You just happen to be the content creator and the business owner. From an Ingram perspective, you're treated exactly the same as the large publishers. You have access to the same global distribution of 39,000 retailers. And Amazon is one retailer among 38,999 other retailers. They just happen to be a very important one. So, okay. So we supply retailers and we supply libraries, and we also supply other wholesalers. So if your local bookstore doesn't buy from Ingram and they buy from another wholesaler, we have the relationships with the other wholesalers too. So it doesn't really matter, although we would prefer it if the bookstore would buy direct. If they buy indirect through another wholesaler, we can still supply the market. So we can get your books into the book selling community. That's our main mission, that's our aim. And that's what makes us different to many of the other platforms out there that either print books or use Ingram for distribution. I have a question. So the question was, when we talk about distribution, are we talking about physical books? We're talking about, and I'll come on to this, we're talking about physical books and also ebooks. IngramSpark can do ebooks and physical. And I'll talk a little bit about how that works in a moment. So that was a really good question in terms of what we're talking about here. We're talking about physical books, i.e. the books, the printed book, and we're also talking about ebooks too. So primarily, the technology that allows us to connect your books to 39,000 retailers globally is primarily through print on demand. So I guess many of you heard of print on demand as a technology? Okay. So really, in terms of the way that works, is that when you put if you put your title with IngramSpark and you fill in the metadata, we send out that to the book selling community, and when they buy the book, we then print the book to order. So just some very simple maths in euros. If the book was 10 euros and you gave away 50% wholesale discount, that's the money the retailer makes. You've now got 5 euros. If the book costs 2 euros to print, that means that we pay you 3 euros for every book that you sell that's 10 euros. That's just a simple way of explaining how it works. So you can print books for your own stock. So if you've got reviewers or you've got people you sell direct to, you can buy 10, 20, 500, 5,000 books. However, the technology is really about enabling the booksellers to buy your book and only needing to print the books when a sale is made. So Ingram make it possible because we have the relationship with the booksellers, the online booksellers and the physical booksellers. So it's all done through print on demand. We have our own print on demand machines in the US because Ingram originated in the US. We have them in the UK where I live in Milton Keynes, which is about 50 miles north of London. We also have them in Melbourne in Australia. And where we don't have a print on demand machine, we work with global partners who print the books in the local market. So we have them in Germany, Poland, India, Russia, China, to name but a few. So we reach beyond the Ingram network. If your book is also an ebook, you can supply Ingram with an EPUB file. So EPUB, and then having the EPUB file, Ingram can convert it into the format that each online retailer requires. So for example, Amazon is a MOBI file. So we create a MOBI file from the EPUB. Apple, Kobo, Microsoft now sell ebooks, and Ingram connect with all the suppliers, all the online retailers of ebooks, as well as physical books. So we launched our platform, Publish Like a Pro. And really we give authors some of the tips in which they would enable them to be their own successful publisher. So one of the things that we really encourage all authors to think about is own your own ISBN. Buy your own ISBN, become your own publisher, publish under your own label. You can get a free ISBN from certain suppliers such as Amazon, but if you use a free ISBN, you're publishing under that owner's imprint. And really, you want to own the entirety of your intellectual property. So buy your own ISBNs, become your own publisher, and take control of your own intellectual property. So at the end of the presentation, I'm going to give you a code, but if you weren't here today and you wanted to set a title up, the cost of setting a title up for both print and ebook is $49. It's all priced in US dollars. That's refunded if you were ordering 50 copies. You get that money back. But that gets your book in the channels, and you set the US dollar price so we can sell it to retailers in America, the Australian dollar price so we can sell it in Australia, Euro, Sterling, and Canadian dollars. Those are the main currencies that we have. So as a publisher, you can price your book in all those markets, and we will connect with that network. As a publisher, so really when you're using IngramSpark, you are of course the author, but you think of yourself as that you're the content owner as well. You're the publisher. You can make that book available as a return or a non-return. So as a return, it means the bookstores can return the book should they not sell it. Now, if you really want to get your books into the bookstores, you may need to think about making the books as returnable, because there are many bookstores that won't stock books unless they can return it. And IngramSpark is one of the few platforms that enables you to return the book or not. It's your business, so you can have it as non-returnable, but bear in mind that may affect your distribution. It may affect the reach of your distribution if you do that.
Since you're talking about this right now, I did make my books returnable in the Ingram interface, and yet they're marked as firm sale in Gardner's website. And so when I saw this online, that it was firm sale, not returnable, I exchanged an email or two with Saskia Watts, your colleague at Ingram, and she basically reported back from checking with her colleague, Amy at Gardner's, that Gardner's, I think the phrase was, we Gardner's always mark POD from that supplier as firm sale. And so is there a way forward with all that?
So that's another really good question, and Rowan, you probably already got this, but here's a few books. So the question was that Rowan is using IngramSpark. He's set the book up as returnable, but one of the local wholesalers in the UK lists the book as non-returnable. So this is a challenge, and there's something we're working on which I can talk about. But really, what Ingram does is it makes the books available in the right way, i.e. the way that you describe it, to all the booksellers and the other wholesalers. However, another wholesaler can list the book with different terms. You could say it's returnable, and then in Rowan's example, Gardners have said it's non-returnable. That's because they've decided that for that type of book, they don't want returns, and they can do that. One of the things we're working on in the UK, and we're doing this in Australia next year, is we're launching services that encourage more independent bookstores to order directly, so we've got more control over the message. So there's a service called iPage, and we're launching iPage in the UK at the moment. It's very well established in America, and we'll launch it in Australia next year. And that's to really navigate around some of the local wholesaler issues that Rowan was just describing. So I think some of these have been covered, but if you're in Ingram distribution as an IngramSpark customer, you're in the Ingram catalog. You are available for retailers to order your book in the same way that they would be able to order some of the traditional published content. So it puts you at the same distribution reach. Now, I use the word distribution. The hard bit, the marketing, the selling, the reaching out to the readers, that's something that we can help with, but really that is something that needs to come from the author or the publisher of that content. So, a lot of people confuse marketing with distribution. We make the content available. We don't necessarily tell everybody that this is the one book that has to be bought. That's something where you guys have to come in, let the readers know that, and understand what's unique about your content and why readers would want to buy that. So Ingram, in the IngramSpark platform, we accommodate all the subject codes, the BISAC code in the UK, the BIC codes, THEMA, the United Nations of codes. So we communicate in the same language that the booksellers communicate in buying content, and that's the main thing that if you remember nothing else from today, think of Ingram as a wholesaler first, and print and distribution is a means of our wholesale network. And that's the main difference between IngramSpark and some of the other platforms that you may be familiar with. You can also set the discount. So if you are a textbook publisher and you are driving the adoptions through the lecturers, you can set a very low discount, 35%, 40%, as low as 30%. If it's more of a trade book and you want the bookstores to buy the book, then we encourage a higher discount. We also encourage returnability if getting in the bookstores is your main mission. As an ebook, we are changing our offering where we pay, you receive 85% off net. So we take 15% from net, so you get 85% off net. That's a new thing that IngramSpark have initiated later this year. Returnability. It says there's 3 options. Outside North America, really there's 2 options. It's return or non-return. The returns in the UK and the returns in Australia is return and destroy. We don't have a warehouse to put the books. In America, we have Ingram Wholesale, which is, a traditional wholesaler that holds thousands and thousands of books. So we can return the books back to the publisher. We don't have that option in Europe. So a question.
First, thanks for the presentation. That's very interesting. To qualify for a book for IngramSpark, does it have to be a full book, or can it be something else like guidelines for a method, or a brochure, or a white paper, or a story or just a poem or part of a novel to see how the marketing will go? Or does it have to be a fully prepared, finished book?
Okay, that's another great question. So I hand out a IngramSpark guide as well for that. So yeah, so the question is, as you may have heard, does it have to be the whole book? Well, I mean, this is your content. We advise that the book is complete, edited, proofread, typeset, and it looks as professional as it could be. However, there are people who use IngramSpark as a non-conventional book. They may use it as a user guide. I'll tell you a story. We've got a customer in Los Angeles, and he has a book in IngramSpark, and it costs $10,000 to buy the book, okay? And we've sold some copies. Now, what he does, he is a consultant for the plastic surgery industry in America. And if you were to hire him for a day, it costs $10,000, but you get a free book, inverted commas. If you don't want him for a day, you can buy his book, and it's $10,000. So we have people using IngramSpark in very, what we would call unconventional ways. You're the publisher. You can set the book as you see. I would always encourage everybody to have the book complete, edited, typeset, proofread, in the best possible way. But it's your content. You can do how you see fit. So.
Sorry, do you have to go with print on demand? My book is a photographic book with inspirational quotes. So my first tranche was a print on demand, but the quality just wasn't there. So I've published now with kind of better quality paper, but would that be something that I could, promote or distribute through IngramSpark?
As many of you would have heard, is IngramSpark print on demand? The answer is it is just print on demand. Ingram, as a wholesaler in America, do have services that can take content that's done through an offset printer. I don't exactly know our stand, but we're in Hall 6 and come down to see some of the new technology that's coming out. Ingram have just done a very, very large deal with Hewlett-Packard. Hewlett-Packard have a new inkjet printer, and they announced that the biggest business-to-business deal has been with Ingram. There was a press release last month about it. And this is a brand new inkjet on coated stock, and it's the next generation up. For those of you who are familiar with print on demand 15 years ago or slightly more, they were very much like a photocopier. The quality was not much better than your regular photocopied book in your office. The technology today and the next generation that's coming on is so much better. The big companies like Canon, Hewlett-Packard, Ricoh are literally investing millions and millions in R&D to make the machines faster and better quality. And also the paper now. So when, 10 years ago, the mills that produce paper for print on demand was exactly the same paper as conventional printing. There's now manufacturers in the paper that are making weaves, different fibers that react better to inkjet technology. So to answer the question, it's print on demand, but it's getting better and better. So have a look at some of the new things that are coming out, and that may be the tipping point of where POD would now be sufficient. I haven't given you a book, have I? Here's a book. So that's a great question, thank you. Right, so what have we done with my clicker? So I think I'm coming to an end. So I think I mentioned you can make the books returnable, non-returnable. As the content owner and the publisher, you can set the discount and the price. You set the price as well. And if you're bold enough, you can go as high as $10,000, just like the LA author did. So you can do that. This is just a screenshot of this kind of things that you can enter as the publisher of your content. So you put in the title, we all are familiar with the title, the subtitle, the language in which your book is in. So if you're an author and you've got demand for your content, think about putting it in different languages. You could do a Spanish translation, you could do a Chinese translation, you could do multiple languages for the same book. Joanna Penn, who's a fantastic author and entrepreneur, she looks at different ways of creating the same content. So she's got the workbook, she's got the reader edition, she's got the different languages, she's got the audio now. So think about different ways that your content can be disseminated, because you really do not know how your readers or listeners, if it's an audiobook, want to ingest your content. So give them as much flexibility as possible. And obviously languages, you may have somebody who reads in German. So if you feel that's a market for you, create a German language or an English language. This is iPage that I was talking about earlier. iPage is the ordering tool. This isn't something as a reader or a book buyer you would see, but if you're a bookseller, you can buy your books from Ingram using iPage. And this, in the corner in the right, it says TN, that's Tennessee, that's where our head office is. And we tell a big fib, we say we've got 204 copies on hand. This is a print-on-demand book, okay? We do this because we don't want the booksellers, as Rowan mentioned about Gardeners, we don't want the booksellers discriminating on the production of the book. We want it on the strength of the content. And then all the metadata that you put in as an author and as the publisher, that is available for booksellers to see, which is why we always encourage the authors to fill out as much content as they can. Include reviews, include any prizes that you may have been awarded or finalist positions that you may have come to. Include that in your metadata, because that will be seen by the booksellers. And then, if all goes well, this is how your books will show on the retailer sites, such as Amazon. Now, this was set up before publication, so this is a pre-order. So this is another thing that I didn't mention. You can set your books up as a pre-publication. If your book's in our system today, you can say the book's available on the 1st of May. Because a lot of booksellers, like the fashion industry, they're buying for the next season. So we're in October now. A lot of booksellers will be looking at books for early February maybe next year. So you can, if you wanted to, you can put your book on the same cycle as a bookseller might buy your book. So that's something you can do.
You've been listening to another great session brought to you by the Indie Author Fringe and the Alliance of Independent Authors, ALLI. You can find out more about both by visiting ALLI's Self-Publishing Advice Centre, www.selfpublishingadvice.org. Now, go write and publish.